Welcome to News Beacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. The world's two largest economies, the United States and China, are locked in a tense standoff over a $100 billion climate fund. This isn't a trade war or military dispute, it's about who pays to fight climate change. The US is scrambling to assemble the fund to help developing nations adapt to a warming planet, and it's pressuring China to contribute. But China has flatly refused, arguing the West should bear the cost for a crisis it created. For Washington, this is about global leadership and shared responsibility. For Beijing, it's about fairness and historical justice. The stakes are enormous. Failure to secure the funds could unravel years of climate negotiations and leave vulnerable nations exposed. The US sees China as a necessary partner, but China insists it's still a developing nation with its own challenges. This standoff exposes deep fractures in the global order and raises doubts about the future of international cooperation. If the US and China can't work together on climate change, what hope is there for solving other global crises? The outcome of this dispute could define the next decade of international politics. America's scramble for $100 billion stems from a broken promise made at UN climate conferences. Developed nations pledged to mobilize this sum annually by 2020 to help poorer countries fight climate change. The deadline passed, trust eroded, and climate disasters have only grown worse. Recent super typhoons, droughts, and floods have put immense pressure on Washington to deliver. The current administration sees fulfilling this pledge as essential to restoring US credibility and leadership. But raising the money alone is politically toxic at home, so the US is seeking help from other major economies, especially China. As the world's second largest economy and top emitter, China's participation would be a game changer. Securing Beijing's contribution would signal unity and strengthen the global fight against climate change. This is the context for America's urgent push, a desperate attempt to meet a moral obligation and salvage its standing on the world stage. The US proposal to China was framed as a partnership, not a demand. American diplomats asked China to contribute $20 billion over 5 years to the climate fund, pitching it as a joint investment in global stability. To sweeten the deal, Washington offered a US-China green technology initiative, collaborating on clean energy innovation. The message: by working together, both nations could accelerate the green transition and lead the world. US officials highlighted shared vulnerabilities: droughts in America, floods in China, arguing that climate change threatens both. The proposal was urgent. Without China's support, the upcoming global climate summit could collapse. The US plea was clear: let's lead together, share the burden, and avert catastrophe. It was a test. Could the two rivals set aside differences for the planet's sake? The world watched as Beijing weighed its response. Would China join the US in a new era of climate leadership, or would rivalry prevail? The answer would shape the future of international cooperation. The stakes could not be higher. China's answer was swift and unequivocal: no. Beijing declared the fund was a commitment from developed nations to developing ones, and China still considers itself a recipient, not a donor. Chinese officials invoked common but differentiated responsibilities, arguing the West caused the crisis and should pay to fix it. Foreign Minister Wang Yi summed it up: those who started the fire should pay for the damage. China insisted it would continue its own green transition and support other developing countries, but not under a Western framework. The rejection was a statement of national sovereignty and a refusal to accept blame for the past. The US was left scrambling for a new strategy as the door to partnership slammed shut. The standoff deepened mistrust and rivalry between the two powers. At the heart of the dispute is a clash over what it means to be developed or developing. The US sees China as an economic powerhouse, arguing it has the means and the duty to help fund climate action. China counters that its development is incomplete, with millions still in poverty, and insists its primary responsibility is to its own people. Washington focuses on China's current emissions, demanding present-day accountability. Beijing looks to history, arguing the West's century of pollution created the crisis. The US wants responsibility based on current impact. China wants it based on historical emissions. This unresolved conflict over who should pay and when remains the central obstacle. Both sides see their position as a matter of justice. The result, deadlock. In Washington, China's rejection sparked frustration and hardened positions. The White House insists that as the world's largest emitter, China must step up. Democrats call for more diplomacy. Republicans demand a tougher stance, arguing China can't be trusted. Policy experts warn that without China, the Paris Agreement framework is weakened, and smaller economies may refuse to contribute. The US message is clear. Leadership means tackling shared problems, and China can't have superpower status without superpower responsibilities. The standoff has deepened skepticism about meaningful climate cooperation with Beijing. The administration continues to appeal to China's sense of global duty, but hopes are fading. The principle of shared burdens is now a source of division, not unity. The world is watching as the US recalibrates its strategy. The question, can global climate action survive without US-China cooperation? In Beijing, the rejection is framed as a stand for justice and sovereignty. Chinese officials and media portray the US request as an attempt to shift blame and contain China's rise. China points to its massive investments in renewables and argues it's already leading by example. Contributing to the fund, they say, would let the West escape its historical responsibilities. President Xi emphasizes South-South cooperation, promising aid without political strings, contrasting China's approach with the West's broken promises. China positions itself as a champion of the developing world, not a follower of Western rules. The decision is cast as a defense of fairness and a declaration of independence from US pressure. For Beijing, this is about more than climate finance. It's about defining its role in a new world order. The message: China will chart its own path. The standoff is now a symbol of a broader struggle over global leadership. The US-China standoff is shaking the foundations of global cooperation. Developing nations, counting on the climate fund, now face greater uncertainty and risk. The collapse of the US-China Green Technology Initiative signals a shift from collaboration to competition. Both countries are likely to build rival green tech ecosystems, complicating the global transition to clean energy. The dispute is forcing other powers, like the EU, India, and Brazil, to choose sides or seek their own paths. The risk: a fragmented, regionalized response to climate change, rather than a unified global effort. Trust in multilateralism is eroding as great power rivalry trumps collective action. The UN's consensus-based climate framework is under severe strain. If the world's two biggest players can't cooperate, what hope is there for tackling other global crises? The vision of a cooperative world order is fading, replaced by a more divided and competitive landscape. As of August 2025, the future of the Global Climate Resilience Fund is bleak. Without China's contribution, the US is unlikely to meet its $100 billion goal before the climate summit. The likely result: disappointment, acrimony, and a deeper divide between rich and poor nations. The US may pivot to a coalition of the willing, seeking smaller contributions from other countries, a slower, less effective approach. China, meanwhile, will boost its own climate aid through bilateral channels, intensifying competition for influence in the global south. Both nations face reputational risks, the US for failing to deliver, China for refusing to help. This dispute is a symptom of a larger shift, the end of uncontested American leadership and the rise of a messy, multipolar world. The US-China rivalry now shapes every aspect of international relations, including the fight against climate change. The hope is that eventually, The logic of shared survival will bring both sides back to the table. Until then, the world must navigate a more dangerous and divided path.